I'm 95 years old, and I'm here to tell you that you are currently throwing your life away. You think you have time. You think your bad luck is an excuse to stay miserable. I was born in 1931 in a town that's now just a hole in the dirt. I've buried 2 husbands, one who broke my spirit and one who saved it. I've stood over the small coffins of my own children. I've been poor enough to know the taste of hunger, and I've been lonely enough to talk to the shadows. Most people my age will tell you it's going to be okay. I'm not going to tell you that. It's only okay if you stop being a coward and start holding the pen to your own story. Fate might write the first chapter, but the rest of the book, that's on you. And right now, most of you are letting someone else write your ending. Look at my hands. These aren't just skin and bone. They are a ledger of 95 brutal winters and 1,000 mornings I didn't want to see the sun. Everything that woman in the video told you is true, but truth is like an onion. It has layers of rot before you get to the core. I need you to hear me say this before you look away or check your notifications. I am 95 years old. I was born in 1931 in a Kentucky coal town that was eventually swallowed whole by the earth, forgotten like a bad dream. I've been a daughter, a terrified wife, a mother who outlived her own blood, and a widow who learned that silence is a heavy blanket. I've been poor in ways that would make your worst financial crisis look like a holiday. I have seen the world turn from horse-drawn carts to digital ghosts, and the only thing that hasn't changed is the weight of regret. You think you're special? You think your pain is unique? It's not. It's just fuel. The only question is whether you'll let it burn you down or use it to light your way out of the dark. My first memories are the color of soot. In a coal town, the sky isn't blue. It's a bruised, heavy gray that sticks to your lungs and stays there forever. We lived in a house where the wind whistled through the floorboards like a funeral organ, and hunger wasn't just a feeling, it was a permanent roommate. People loved to say, she had a good life, she was poor, but happy. That is a lie told by those who have never watched their mother boil stones in a pot, just to make the children think there was soup coming. That kind of poverty leaves a hollow space in your soul that no amount of success can ever fill. It teaches you that the world doesn't owe you a single breath, let alone a dream. My mother was a saint of endurance, but she died with nothing but calluses on her fingers and a heart that was simply too tired to keep beating. I learned my first lesson in that dust. If you wait for the world to be kind, you will die waiting. You have to be harder than the coal they dig out of the ground. I was married for the first time at 16 years old. In the movies, they show you lace, flowers, and a future. In 1947, for a girl like me, it was just a business transaction. One less mouth for my father to feed during a hard winter. I will not say his name. I haven't let that name cross my lips in 70 years, and I'm not starting today. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a piece of property he could cook for him and bleed for him. I spent 8 years in a cage of pure, unadulterated fear. Do you know what it's like to live by the sound of a footstep? To know, simply by the way a door creaks or a floorboard groans, whether you are going to be ignored or broken that night. I had 2 babies in that house, and my only mission every day was to be a human shield for them. People talk about sticking it out for the sake of the family. That is a toxic lie told by people who have never had to hide a bruise with flour. Fear is a poison that turns your blood into ice, and I lived in that ice for nearly 3,000 days. The silence in that house was always worse than the noise. When he was loud and angry, at least you knew where the threat was located. When he was quiet, the air felt like it was made of jagged glass. I would sit in the corner with Mary Catherine, my oldest, and try to make ourselves so small we became invisible. I wanted to disappear into the very wallpaper. You think you're trapped because of your mortgage or your complicated social life. You don't know what trapped is until you realize the person who is supposed to be your sanctuary is actually your jailer. I used to stare out the window at the birds in the yard and hate them for having wings while I was tethered to a monster. That's the great deception of abuse. It makes you believe you are the problem, that you are the one who is fundamentally broken. But I wasn't broken. I was just buried under a mountain of someone else's hate. And then, one night in 1946, that mountain moved in a way I never expected. He went to a bar on a Tuesday night and he never came back. Someone else's husband put a knife in him over a game of cards and a bottle of cheap whiskey. People called it a tragedy. I called it the first time I could breathe without asking for permission. I was 24 years old with 2 toddlers, $0, and a reputation as the widow of a drunk. I stood at his funeral and felt absolutely nothing but the heat of the sun on my neck. I didn't cry. Why would I cry for the man who stole my youth and tried to crush my soul? I had nothing, but for the first time in my existence, my hands belonged to me. I realized then that the book of fate didn't end with a knife. It began there. I had a choice. I could crawl back to the mines and beg for scraps, or I could start walking. I took my babies and I left that town before the dirt was even settled on his grave. Freedom doesn't always smell like roses. Sometimes it smells like a greasy bus station and stale cigarettes, but it's the sweetest thing you'll ever taste. I found a job cleaning rooms at a motel outside of Lexington. I scrubbed floors until my knees were permanently scarred, and my hands bled every time I gripped a mop handle. I lived in a cramped room that smelled of bleach and old regret, but it was my room. I saved every single penny. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't buy a radio for music. I bought milk for my children, and I bought silence for my soul. People look at the help like they are part of the furniture, like we are invisible. I was a ghost for 3 years, watching people come and go, watching them waste their lives on affairs, petty arguments, and hollow vanities. I learned more about the human heart from the trash people left behind in those rooms than I ever did from a church sermon. You think you're too good for the dirty work? You're not. The dirty work is exactly where you find out what you're made of. I found out I was a survivor who didn't need a man to define my worth, and that's exactly when Silas appeared. I met Silas at a church supper on a rainy Friday. He was a quiet man with hands that looked like gnarled tree roots and eyes that had seen their own share of war and shadows. I didn't trust him. I didn't trust anyone with a pulse. Every man I'd ever known had used his strength to diminish me, to make me smaller, so he could feel bigger. Silas didn't try to impress me with loud stories or promises of a gilded life. He just showed up. He offered to fix the leak in my motel room roof. He brought extra apples for my kids from his farm. He waited. He waited for 3 long years before he even asked to hold my hand. That is the kind of patience you don't see in your swipe and discard world. You think love is a lightning bolt. Real love is a slow-growing oak tree. It's steady. It's boring. It's showing up when the car won't start in the middle of a blizzard. Silas taught me that a man's strength isn't for breaking things. It's for holding the world together when it's trying to fall apart. We married in 1949 and moved to a farm that wasn't much more than rocks, mud, and a lot of hope. Мы работали от рассвета до того момента, когда на небе высыпали звезды. It was a hard life, a back-breaking life, but it was a kind life. We had 3 more children, and for a while, I truly believed the Book of Fate had finally decided to be gentle with my soul. We didn't have a television or a fancy car, but we had the sound of the wind through the tall corn and the warmth of a stove that wasn't fueled by someone else's rage. I learned that happiness isn't the absence of struggle. It's the presence of peace. You spend your lives chasing more followers, more gadgets, more noise to drown out your thoughts. I spent my life chasing the moment when I could sit on my porch and not be afraid of the shadow in the doorway. If you have peace in your house tonight, you are richer than any billionaire. But peace is a fragile thing, and the world has a vicious way of reminding you that you're never truly safe. My first baby, Mary Catherine, was my absolute miracle. She was born in the middle of the darkest years of my first marriage, but she never let that darkness touch her spirit. She had blonde hair that looked like spun sunlight and a laugh that could make you forget your stomach was empty. She was 11 years old in 1952. The year the world turned cold and terrifying again. Polio. It was a word that struck absolute terror into the heart of every mother in America. One day she was running through the fields, chasing butterflies, and the next she was complaining of a dull headache. By the 3rd day, she couldn't move her legs at all. I remember the suffocating smell of that hospital, the bleach, the iron, and the raw despair. I remember the rows of iron lungs, those giant metal coffins keeping children breathing with a rhythmic, mechanical hiss. Mary Catherine didn't get a machine. She just got a bed and a mother who stayed by her side until her own eyes were raw and red from crying. She was the best part of me, and she was the first thing the world decided to take back. Watching your child die is a slow-motion car wreck that lasts for an eternity of weeks. You see them getting smaller, their voice getting thinner and more transparent, until they are just a whisper in a room full of heavy air. I prayed. I bargained with a God I wasn't sure was listening. I offered my own soul, my own breath, my very life just to see her walk again. No kniga była napisana. One gray morning, I went in to check on her, and the light in her eyes had finally, mercifully, gone out. She was 30 years old in her soul, but only 11 in her body. I stood in that room and felt the very world tilt on its axis. That was the moment I almost gave up. I wanted to lie down in the cold dirt next to her and let the grass grow over my head. You think you've had a bad day. You haven't had a bad day until you've had to pick out a dress for your daughter's funeral. That kind of grief doesn't ever leave you. You just learn to carry it like a heavy stone in your pocket. You get used to the weight, but you never for a second forget it's there. People say love is a feeling or a poem or some grand, expensive gesture. They are wrong. Love is staying when every single instinct in your body is screaming at you to run. After Mary Catherine died, I became a ghost. I didn't cook. I didn't sleep. I didn't speak for months. Silas didn't try to fix my brokenness. He didn't tell me she was in a better place. He didn't tell me everything happens for a reason. That is a cowardly lie people tell to make themselves feel better about your tragedy. He just stayed.
He made sure I ate, even when food tasted like ash. He held my hand while I screamed at the ceiling until my voice was gone. He took care of our other children when I couldn't even remember how to brush my own hair. He sat in the darkness with me for an entire season until I was finally ready to look at the sun again. That is what love looks like. It's not a diamond ring. It's a person who isn't afraid of your deepest, ugliest grief. If you have someone who stays when the lights go out, don't you dare let them go. My son Jimmy was born in 1951, just a year before his sister got sick. He grew up in a house where grief was the wallpaper, but he was a quiet, resilient boy who always tried to fix things. He learned to work the farm with Silas, and I watched him grow into a man with his father's broad shoulders and my cautious eyes. But 1969 arrived, and with it, the draft. Jimmy didn't wait for his number to be called. He enlisted because he thought it was his moral duty. I begged him. I pleaded on my knees. I told him I'd already given one child to the earth, and I couldn't survive giving another. He looked at me with that stubborn, quiet kindness and said, "Mama, I can't stay here in the safety of this farm while other boys are dying in my place." He left on a rainy Tuesday morning, and I felt the same cold wind I'd felt in 1946. Only this time I knew the mountain wasn't going to move. It was going to fall directly on me. 4 months. That's all the time he was given. An ambush outside of Da Nang. I remember the black car pulling up the long driveway. I remember the 2 men in crisp uniforms walking slowly up the path. I didn't even wait for them to knock. I just sat down on the porch steps and waited for the world to end. One more time. They gave me a perfectly folded flag and a small box containing his earthly remains. A watch that had stopped at the moment of impact, a wallet with a weathered picture of us, and a letter home that he never got to finish. I was 47 years old, and I had now buried 2 of my children. You want to talk about hard truth? The truth is that life is viciously unfair, and sometimes it takes the best people and leaves the rot behind. I spent a year wishing I was the one in that box, but I had other children who were still breathing, and a husband who was breaking apart right in front of me. You don't survive grief because you are strong. You survive because you have no other choice. You think you have plenty of time. You're waiting for the right moment to quit that soul-crushing job, or leave that toxic person, or finally tell someone you are sorry for the mess you made. Let me tell you something from the very edge of a century. There is no right moment. There is only right now, and now is leaking through your fingers like dry sand. I've seen people healthier than me drop dead at 30. I've seen people who did everything right get cancer anyway. There is no secret formula. The book is written, but you don't get to see the last page until you're already on it. You are holding the pen at this very second. Every minute you spend being miserable because you're afraid of change is a minute you've effectively murdered. Don't tell me you're scared. I was scared every day for 8 years, and the only thing I truly regret is not leaving 8 years sooner. Fear is a ghost. It only has power if you decide to believe in its presence. Stop believing in ghosts and start believing in the air in your lungs. People love to say you can't change when you're old. That is a lazy lie told by people who have given up. I changed my entire world when I was 24. I changed again when I was 30.
I changed when I was 76 and Silas died, and I had to learn how to exist in a silent house for the first time in 50 years. You are never too old to change, but you are very often too stubborn to try. You get comfortable in your own misery because misery is familiar. It's a blanket, you know. You'd rather be unhappy in a way you understand than happy in a way that requires you to be brave. That is the true death. It's not the heart stopping, it's the mind closing shut. If you're watching this and you feel that persistent itch in your soul that says, "This isn't my life," listen to it. That itch is the only part of you that's still truly alive. Don't drown it in social media or cheap distractions. Change doesn't require a miracle. It just requires a decision followed by a step. Decide today that you are worth more than the half-life you've settled for. I have more regrets than I can count on my weathered fingers, but the ones that hurt the most are not the things I did. They are the calls I never made, the I love yous I kept locked in my heart because I was too angry or too proud to speak them. Моя дочь позвонила мне за 3 дня до того, как погибла в автокатастрофе 10 лет назад, и я не взяла трубку, потому что была обижена из-за какого-то пустякового спора. I thought I'd just call her back tomorrow when I was in a better mood. There is no guaranteed tomorrow. Tomorrow is a story we tell ourselves to feel safe. Call your mother. Call your father. Call that friend you haven't spoken to in 3 years because of some stupid pride. Do it today. Do it right now when this video finishes. Because I promise you there will come a day when the phone just rings and rings, and the silence on the other end will be the heaviest thing you've ever had to carry. Don't let your last memory of someone be a missed call you thought you could return. It is so incredibly easy to be kind, and yet most of you treat it like a heavy burden. I've lived through a Great Depression and a World War, and the only thing that kept the entire world from falling into the abyss was the kindness of people who had absolutely nothing left to give. A kind word costs you nothing but a second of your time, but it might be the only thing keeping the person next to you from giving up on life completely. You don't know what people are carrying behind their eyes. You don't know whose child just died, or whose marriage is a war zone, or who hasn't had a real meal in 2 days. Be the person who actually sees them, not the person who judges them or scrolls past them, but the person who acknowledges their humanity. In a world that's getting colder and more digital, your humanity is your only real currency. Spend it freely. Don't wait until you're 95 to realize that the only thing that actually mattered was how you treated the people walking the same dusty path as you. So, here we are. I've told you about the coal dust and the folded flags, the iron lungs and the lonely motel rooms. I'm still here, and by some miracle, you're still here too. That means your story is not finished yet. You are the one holding the pen. Are you going to write another chapter about how you were too scared to be happy, or too tired to be brave? Or are you going to write something that actually means something when the lights go out? Life is a terrifying, beautiful, violent, and miraculous thing. Don't you dare waste it. Whatever you need to change it right now. Whatever you need to say it with your full heart. Don't accept a version of yourself that makes you miserable just because you think you've run out of chances. You haven't run out of chances until the first shovelful of dirt hits the lid of your coffin. Until then, you are alive. Start acting like it. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 95 years old. And I'm telling you, it's not too late. Use it while it's yours. Thank you for listening to an old woman's rambling. I know I'm not as pretty as the people you usually watch, but I'm a lot more honest. If even one of you picks up the phone or walks out of a bad door today, then my breath wasn't wasted. Subscribe if you want the hard truth, not the glossy fake version they sell you everywhere else. We don't have much time, any of us. Let's make it count for something. Go call them. Do it now. Don't wait.